Ukraine is facing a political question that could be almost as divisive as the war itself. Should the country hold elections while Russian missiles and drones are still raining down? Well, President Volodymyr Zelensky says holding a vote now would be far too dangerous, warning that elections during wartime could split Ukraine. Let's talk about the man who started this debate, Mykhailo Fedorov, Ukraine's former defense minister and once a close ally of President Zelensky. Fedorov rose to prominence as a key strategist behind Zelensky's 2019 election campaign. He later became a digital reformer and a prominent advocate of drones and Starlink during the war. After being removed as defense minister, Fedorov has now called for a way to hold wartime elections, putting him at the center of a new political challenge to Zelensky. So what does this political battle really mean for Ukraine? And could elections during wartime actually threaten the country's unity? At the same time, Ukraine is facing an intensifying military challenge with shortages of crucial Patriot interceptor missiles and Russia stepping up its attacks. To understand what Ukrainians are thinking on the ground and what the political mood is inside the country and whether elections are even realistically possible right now, we're joined by our guest from Kiev, Oleksiy Melnik, co-director of Foreign Relations and International Security Programs at the Razumkov Center in Kiev, and also former Deputy Defense Minister for Ukraine. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Let's begin by this. Now, Zelensky's once ally calling for elections at a time when there has been an escalation in the war. Why is that so?
Actually, his statement was received first as the call for elections, and then later on he made some comments and he said that actually he didn't call for immediate elections. He just raised the issue of the necessity of elections, and he explained that his position is to start or to create a team which will work on preparations for elections, analyzing all the risks and possibilities for conducting elections. But actually, it's what was not a call for immediate elections.
Right. Now, you are a former Deputy Defense Minister for Ukraine, and he happens to be former Defense Minister. He must be aware of the consequences and struggle of holding elections now. Does Fedorov's position reflect a wider debate within Ukraine's political and military establishment at this point?
If we put aside the first perception of his statement and his latest comments, I would say that there is a consensus that Ukraine needs elections, because the last elections took place in 2019, and according to Ukrainian law, the president and parliament is supposed to be elected for 5 years. And there is, again, in general, Ukrainians, citizens and political elite say that we need elections. But there is also consensus that there is no possibility for elections nowadays. About 2/3 of Ukrainian population, according to public opinion polls, are against elections at wartime. They are eager to have elections, but after the war, and also Ukrainian law forbids elections during martial law.
Right. Absolutely. So at this point of time, because of this chaos that's happening, or the tensions, if we may say so, could this become the beginning of a larger political confrontation when they're in the middle of a war?
I don't think so, because as I said again, there is a general consensus among Ukrainian political elite, and also there is a very small demand for elections in the Ukrainian society.
All right. So according to you, so we've seen protests as well. Is the majority of Ukrainians calling this, they want this election, or they are not agreeing that they don't need a wartime election at this point?
Again, as I said, it is a dilemma. They do understand that we need elections and we need to change our parliament, we need to change our president. But 2/3 of Ukrainians say that no elections at the wartime. Peacetime, ceasefire, 6 months or 3 months for preparation, and then, again, according to public opinion polls, the majority of Ukrainians are ready to take part in the elections, but after the war.
So do you see any hesitation from Zelensky? Because he's talking about the fact that this is going to divide the society. How do you look at Zelensky's perspective about, that it will divide the society? Do you see some hesitation from Zelensky about his chances of not winning the election?
This is the case when I fully agree with my president that it will be additional destabilization of Ukraine because the political struggle, you know the way that candidates conduct their campaigns. There will be a lot of critics against each other, empty promises, etc., etc. And that's what Ukraine doesn't need definitely nowadays. Whether President Zelensky has a chance to win elections, according to public opinion polls, he is still among three most favorable candidates. But his chances to win the second tour are rather low. So he may win the elections, but he may lose the elections.
And about Mykhailo Fedorov, do you see an inspiration, an aspiration of Fedorov of getting into politics from his side? Because he's yet to visit US as well in the coming days. So what do you predict his plans could be? Entering the politics?
He's already in politics because he used to be a minister of digital transformation. He used to be a minister of defense, and ministers in Ukraine are political figures. And also when he made his statement, a lot of people, experts, receive it as his announcement of being a candidate for presidency. But later on, he said that, no, this is not about my personal plans. This is just about, my intends to protect Ukrainian democracy. And he also explained the purpose of his visit to the United States, that he will probably mostly focus on what he was doing before. It means that talking to representatives of American defense business, talking to his colleagues in IT sectors, that's what he said.
Also, let's talk about the meeting that's taking place, the meeting of the coalition of the willing. Are Europe's current military commitments so far that they have announced enough for Ukraine to defend its cities against Russia's increasingly intense missile and drone attacks as of now?
Just today, there was an announcement that the European Union and, of course, members of the coalition of the willing will provide additional funding for Ukraine. For instance, the European Union will provide 6.1 billion euros for military needs, and especially for air defense procurement. But at the end of the day, air defense, Patriot missiles do not solve the problem. It's like a painkiller, because this main source of the problem is the Russian aggression. And as long as Russia has money to produce missiles, as long as Russia has possibilities to launch ballistic missiles, the problem will not be solved.
And talking about this Russian aggression, can Ukraine realistically maintain its defense if US support remains uncertain and the European countries cannot rapidly expand the weapons production as of now?
It's a good question, and this question has been on the table from day one. Because when Russia launched this invasion in February 22, even the best Ukrainian friends abroad would give Ukraine 72 hours, 2 weeks to sustain. But now we are 4.5 years of Russian aggression. And Ukraine is still able to hold the line, because actually for already more than 6 months, there is the deadlock on the front line. There are some tactical changes, but Russia is not advancing. And moreover, if, for instance, 4 years ago, Ukraine had no capabilities to deliver deep strikes inside Russian territories, now all the Russian territory up to Ural mountains are under Ukrainian attack. Attacks are very painful for Russian critical infrastructure, for Russian oil refinery, transportation. Russians are queuing now for hours to get gasoline. Can you, or could someone imagine 4 years ago that Russia, which is the main of the oil producers in the world, would have shortage of oil? And also, if we talk about other vulnerabilities of Russia, Russian Black Sea fleet actually was destroyed by Ukrainians who didn't have any navy, classic navy at that time.
Right. That being said, how long do you think Ukraine can actually maintain that kind of defensive posture going forward? And do you see any sort of diplomatic talks taking place, whether from the US or the Europe, with the Russians to get this to close? Or are we looking at a never-ending war at this moment?
War will end one day. And the question when, I don't think that anybody has this answer. If you listen to Russian narratives, they've been talking for 4 years that Ukraine will collapse tomorrow, day after tomorrow, which fortunately haven't happened yet. Also, Russian president demonstrates its willingness to continue the war forever, which is also not possible, because Russia has huge economic problems, Russia has problems with manpower, and Ukraine has the same problem. And you, in one of your previous question, you raised the issue of the external support for Ukraine. This is one of the Ukraine's main vulnerabilities, because we are heavily dependent on external support. About 50% of Ukrainian budget, not military budget, but general budget for salaries for teachers, doctors, pensions, come from our partners. And this is the question of elections, future elections in Europe, whether Europe will remain united and will be able to continue this support for Ukraine.
Of course, that is an important take there. Of course, we'll have to wait and see what we see from this meeting that takes place, and of course, wait for the future to see what happens next. Thank you so much, Mr. Melnyk, for joining us and giving your time and giving your opinions. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having me.